Thank you, Jason. Thank you for sparing your time. Thank you for joining me in this podcast. And it is uh, like after a long time, I'm doing a podcast, and this feels good that I'm doing it with you. And it's a good
Thank you.
starting point for me to start the series of a podcast again.
It's wonderful to be with you, Pierre. We've been in touch over text. We've shared so many ideas, and to be able to talk on your podcast, I'm very blessed to be here with you.
Thank you. Would you like to let us know about a little about your background and the institute you are running and
Sure, sure. Let me try to be brief on my background. I was born in Philadelphia and I grew up in Richmond and I went to school in Atlanta. I spent 10 years in New York City on a spiritual journey. I grew up Jewish, but not practicing to the extent that I do now. And I went on a journey to find what is my spiritual calling. I didn't feel like there was one around me at the time. And I studied pretty much every religion except Judaism. I didn't think Judaism had the answers for me. I studied Taoism and Sufism and Hinduism, and through a series of events, I came to my Judaism. But even in my Judaism, I was really having a major challenge with the particular traditions and a universal outlook
hmm,
in our mystical traditions. And through a series of events and a long period of searching in New York City, God bless New York City, gave me all the resources I need to meet with individuals and talk it over with them. Here's my struggle. Here's what I'm looking for. So I met my wife Michal and moved to Richmond. And then came to Memphis, Tennessee after our two daughters were born. So I try to be brief on my background because really the thing I want to focus on is I did find a concept in New York City meeting with the top jazz artists who were open to meeting with me and me putting on their shows, which was just remarkable. These are the top people in the world, and I would call them and I said, I'm going to have a music series at my synagogue. Would you come? And they said, no. But eventually one said yes, and then the others came, and I met with them and spoke with them. And essentially, my idea is while watching these amazing jazz artists in the middle of a synagogue, I thought, what if any house of worship had a universal room where I, as a Jew, could go into a mosque or a gurudwara or any place, and there'd be one room set for the particular faith traditions. Then there'd be another room called the Universal Room where the house of God would have a room for everybody to walk into and just pray through music. And that was the concept I came up with in 2004 called the Universal Language Room. And so fast forward to today, I've been working on it for 20 years, but the past 2 or 3 years it's done really well. I held on to it for about 20 years and it really never caught. Recently it's caught, and I think God just said, you're just going to have to plant the seed and wait for it to come above ground. So, in a 2-minute overview, that's my overview, and I'm thrilled that this particular project led me to this great Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, and I've developed a way to play music with my Sikh friends, Baha'i friends, Sufi friends, and the interest is growing. And I met a certain person that we both know in Israel who said, "I love your idea. Could you please meet Pir Mudasir?" And I said, "Oh, I would love to speak with him." So that brings us to this wonderful podcast that you're leading.
that's right. That's very right. Philadelphia. I recall my memories. I know Philadelphia as a mystical city. There is a shrine, a Sufi shrine in the suburbs of Philadelphia,
Really?
shrine of Baba Muhyiddin. Yeah, there is a huge community of followers of Baba Muhyiddin. This is the biggest Sufi shrine in USA, and
Wow.
yeah, it's a very spiritual place. Baba Muhyiddin came USA from Sri Lanka. Uh,
That's amazing.
the
Oh,
second
I'd
thing,
love to visit.
the second connection is about this whole concept of universal mysticism.
Hmm.
I met Dr. H.J. Whitwin back in 2013-14 in Holland, and he was the person with whom, in collaboration, I started the Universal Sufi Council. and he believed in universal Sufism, and his vision was that Sufism is the essence of all religions. So mysticism is something which he found a common ground to bring different religious groups together, and they can, like, when you sit on religious thoughts or discuss religious thoughts, you have a debate. But when you come on the mystical values of religion, then you find the common grounds, then you share the lyrics, then you share the music, then you share the mystic values of your traditions. So these two connections, the universal mysticism, Dr. Ejewitmin, and this Philadelphia connection because of Baba Muhyiddin, is very interesting, and it's a connecting force between us two.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I'll have to put it on my future travels to go there to the shrine. And it's an interesting connection in another respect that the great Rabbi Maimonides, his son Avraham ben Arambam, was very much a student of Sufism, and I love what he says about the rational philosophy of his father Maimonides, and also everything he learned from the Sufis, who he said also he felt that they were reflecting a lot of the great prophets of Israel. And but what I think when I come to Avram Abulafia, what he articulated was exactly what you're saying. He felt that Hebrew in our tradition was the holy language, but he didn't think it was exclusive to other languages. He felt that Hebrew had a universal component. That's what made it holy. And he felt that Judaism had a mystical tradition, as you're saying, like Sufism, which is we have our Jewish halacha, laws of Shabbat and Yom Tov, and putting on our tefillin and a talit, a prayer shawl. But we also have the Kabbalah, which is the way that we relate to everybody. Everybody is in the divine image, everyone has a divine soul. And as I went through the Jewish mystical traditions of Kabbalah and Hasidut, I think to me, our very challenging, tragic history as Jews, the universal aspect was covered up. And we just lived through something very, 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 very tragic. And I can see a lot of people saying, what do we want to have to do with the world? And I can understand that feeling. So um, I think the work that we're doing and the podcast that we're doing to talk about keeping those paths of universalism open, to say, here it is in Sufism, here it is in Judaism, is just so important. And that's why I'm just so thrilled that the work that you're doing and that I was made aware of your Universal Sufi Council and the Sufi art, culture, heritage. It just raises my soul to know that we are in many ways colleagues on this. It's really amazing.
Truly, truly. And tell me about your institute and experience of 20 years now, practically in the field and dealing mainly with the music, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct,
how it
correct.
was, how it was.
It is a wonderful question. This is my favorite thing to talk about, so I'll try not to go too long. um, I live next to a bridge, the George Washington Bridge in Manhattan. So I was in Washington Heights. I love that little neighborhood, and I just kept reflecting on the bridge. And I would hear people say that we're all one, and I would kind of say, well, we're not. I'm very different than a Muslim or a Christian in my outlook, but that's fine. The idea of the bridge to me was so interesting. You will be your island, I will be my island, but we'll be connected through a bridge. I don't want you to become me. I don't want you to insist I become you. And the bridge just became such a powerful symbol to me of I'd like to cross over and learn about you. Then I'd like to go back to my house and cross back over. And can't we be interconnected instead of being all one and the same? And so the bridge symbol always became very powerful to me. Now, on that bridge at 179th and Pinehurst was a synagogue called that was nicknamed the Bridge Shul. And Rabbi Block over there, a wonderful rabbi, allowed me to use the basement to have music and arts ideas. So in 2003, we had a night of, I think we called it Torah and World Culture. We had Tai Chi teachers, we had music, and then I thought that's a nice idea, and people had a nice evening, but there's not a concept there. There's nothing to practice when you go home. It's like a nice evening out. So the next year, I asked. Now these names are niche names, but they're very well known in the music world. I asked Andy Statman and Dave Liebman and John Zorn and Kenny Werner to come to be jazz artists in residency at this synagogue, and they all said, "Hey, we're kind of busy doing like professional jazz life." I was like, "Yeah, of course you are." But one person said yes, Andy said yes, and the other guy said, "Yeah, okay, we'll come." So they started playing the music at the Bridge School. So I said, why don't I start something called the Bridge Institute with this concept of remain who you are, but I really want to get to know you through music. There's nothing to disagree with when we talk music. There's no concept you could say, oh, that's offensive. How could you say be do ba ba dee? and and so I started the Bridge Institute in 2004, and I had it certified. And I do want to give them a tremendous credit. The Volunteer Lawyers of America are a group in New York. If they like your idea, they'll build out your institute, which costs $2,000 or $3,000 for free. So I presented my case to them. They said, "We really like your idea. We'll do it for free." And they ended up filing everything for me. So I became a 501c3 through their generosity. So I really want to acknowledge their wonderful work. And and so that was 2004. So year after year, I worked on it. I tell people about it. They're like, "Yeah, okay." It never really clicked with folks. And I was always trying to, well, maybe I'll present it this way. I'll make it look better that way. I'll improve it this way. And I just didn't give up for 20 years. And I came to Memphis, and the local federation said, "Oh, we really like what you're doing." And I met certain studios who said, "We like what you're doing." And I met in New York, by the way, I want to say I met William Ruiz and Gilbert Smith, and I started to learn about the Baha'i faith through Gilbert. And so the two of us just stuck together, and we formed Nachshon's Leap. Nachshon was a prince of the tribe of Judah in the Torah. And when Moses came to split the sea, there's another story in our Midrash, not in the Torah, but in the Midrash, that this head of the tribe of Judah jumped into the water first before it split. And he was actually walking in the water saying, "This is the only way we can go." And he was drowning because he was up to the water, still walking. I love that story. So I called my band Nachshon's Leap. I was going to leap over to Sufis, leap to Sikhs, and have this leap of faith band, use music to bring us together. So that's the Institute. And here in Memphis, it's done well. And we've received funding, and I've taught the system to people in Indonesia, Uganda, um, one more place, Rajasthan, India, and we may have a couple people in South America starting. And it's a thrill. It's a thrill. It's a huge blessing to think, I held on to this until folks started saying it makes sense. So I try to be brief. I hope I was. That's really the history, and we hope to make music a real a real second language for every human. Because people say, English is my first language, my second language, I guess for me is Hebrew and Arabic. But I would really love music to be our second language. And then I think whatever language you speak is a lot of your perspective. So I think if we practice our universal language, we can practice our universal perspective.
I completely agree with you. I completely agree with you. And this is very interesting concept which you are working, the different faith groups. And I guess it helps to bring different faith groups together. And once you provide people the venue to sit together, then that togetherness, a magical thing. People start understanding each other. They start respecting each other. They start agree to disagree with each other, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of diversity. They start accepting the right of existence of others. And
That's a very good way to say it.
yeah, so it's an interesting concept you're working on. So how are your experience with connectivity to other communities and other, like you're now working, trying to connect with Indonesia, you're trying to connect with Uganda. We are developing a connection between Pakistan and your institute, and you are trying to reach out to Rajasthan. What are the challenges you are facing?
That's a wonderful question. I can think the first challenge is is the first language barrier. in Uganda speak mostly English. In Rajasthan, in Indonesia, pretty good English. What my major challenge is that it's always been metaphorically. People have said music is a universal language, metaphorically. So my major challenge is to say no, it's actually a language. And so I really had to challenge myself. How do I teach the system? And I'll show you some of the books I brought that really enhance my teaching. Um, but I will say the joy of this project is that there's not many challenges. Once we get the music going, the smiles start coming. That's why I said just you said it so well. The Indonesian friend Wayan Gama, he's a wonderful gamelan teacher, and he said, "Oh, I'm starting to understand what you're saying, and I already do that in my music." I said, "Yeah, I know you already do it. I'm just giving you one angle to teach it to people who don't do it. They'll learn it faster." He's like, "Yeah, they would learn it faster," and that's very cool. The thing is, it's not. I'm not teaching a system that's complete. It's a very incomplete system. I just give some of the tools, and the person says, "Oh, I'll take these tools and do it my own way," which every human essentially wants to do. And so that's why I love it. So I say, yeah, these are just tools I learned from, developed from jazz artists and from Abraham Abulafia, and develop it your way. See how to apply it. So the other challenge is monetary, but we're getting funding and it's actually coming through. So I just make sure that I fund these musicians who are really dedicating their life to unity and connectivity through music. It's not really seen as a profession right now, and I hope to build its respectability or its functionality of musicians, so they'll continue to receive funding. So I think my first challenge in life was to be recognized as a as an interesting idea. I think I've crossed that. So would it be okay with your permission? I would show you the big breakthrough that I had to meet the challenge.
Yeah, yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. So I would just teach music and I would sit with people for many years and say, okay, just play something on your instrument to me. And they'd say, well, what do I do? And I was like, hey, you're right. I'm not being concrete enough. So I came across the writings of Abraham Abulafia, and I'll show it to you here. These are the cards I hand out. Let me just see if it'll focus on it. And there.
Yeah.
So it just has an Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalid. That's the four Hebrew letters, and you can see it's all permutated.
Right.
And right, and Abraham Abulafia would say, meditate on these letters, and you'll find closeness to God. So I would look at this and say, I don't know what he's talking about. I don't know how he feel close to God with that. But then one day I was reading this wonderful book by Jared Braganzi. He's a great jazz saxophonist. And on page 10, which still gives me the chills, I was in this house, probably not in this room, but another room. He said, take 4 notes and practice them. There we go. Practice
Yeah.
your 4 notes 24 different ways. So I said, oh my gosh, it's a match. It's a perfect match. And I said, I could teach music this way. I could do the notes. And so with that, I would just I take a small xylophone, like so, and I just tell people, let's start on C,
Mm-hmm.
and let's just play one permutation. And now let's play permutation number 2 to respond to it like you're in dialogue. Let's do the next permutation. What I want to do this actually. Let's do the last permutation. So you have just 6 of the 24 permutations. You have all these beautiful melodies. You don't have to learn a C scale. You don't have to learn harmony. You don't have to go to music school. Just the permutations allowed me to tell people, you say a permutation, you respond. So person A would say, and then person B would say, and he's like, oh, I'm talking to somebody through music. Now, that is just the basic training wheels of the bike. But when you get into it, you can start putting the permutations everywhere, like so. Right? And I'm just, in my mind, I'm just thinking one permutation wants to say something to another, and it's just constant dialogue, constant flow of music. And to conclude my thoughts here, once I apply it to my guitar, which I hope is in tune, yeah. So on my guitar, I used to, really play a lot of scales when I'd improvise. I'd go whatever, kind of play all over the place. The permutations really gave me organization to my music. So now I kind of play like you'll hear me talking through the music instead of sometimes when you're a musician, you try to showcase the skill you've developed. And audiences typically don't want to hear that, to be perfectly honest. They kind of want to hear conversation, logical conversation. Okay, so they kind of want to hear, all right? So I'm just having one permutation like this, talk to this permutation. And once you say that to people, like so many light bulbs go off and they say, which I love, oh, I can play music. I can talk through music. And I'm like, yeah, you don't need although it's wonderful to go to music school if you want to devote your life to it, but you don't need to enjoy the beauty of conversation. So I think that unique breakthrough when I started teaching that to folks and they're like, oh, I could practice this at home. Or I can do this with you and not feel embarrassed like I don't know enough or whatever it might be. And I'm like, no, we're all equal playing field. I'm just using the permutations. I've just been doing it longer. And I teach it to young students or older students or even professional musicians. They're like, this is opening up worlds to me. So it's very gratifying that breakthrough came through Abraham Abulafia. And to conclude, I didn't have in my life for many years like a primary spiritual teacher who I felt that like my soul like clicked with like just I don't know. You may have had this experience in life. I just clicked, and I thought, oh, this is now he's from the 12th century, but I just feel like the master teacher. I found him. So and again, as much as I use Abulafia, he's not teaching Judaism or expecting people to follow Judaism. He felt that Judaism needed and had a spiritual universal component, and that's why I feel that anyone could benefit without having anything really to do with Abulafia. He just again, I think of it as Home Depot. You go into Home Depot and you get the tools you need. You build what you want to build. So that is the history of the Bridge Institute and why when I talk to people in Indonesia or other places and I show them the permutations, they're like, oh, well, this is great. And you can see it in J.S. Bach. I particularly have seen it in Bach. And of course, you can see it in all music. I'm just saying I really saw it there in Bach. But it's a tiny piece of information where people can then improvise music just like a jazz artist does. It's just that the jazz artist has put many hours into refine it to such a high level.
Did you ever get a chance to go through the musical work of Pir Inayat Khan Chishti?
I have not, no.
Oh, really? He has done a lot. He been in America, then he stayed a lot of time in Holland. His disciples are living in USA. Pir Zia is a famous Sufi scholar, and the whole work of Pir Inayat Khan is around universal music.
Oh,
And
is it Israt Khan? Is that the name?
sorry,
Say the name again for the musician.
Inayat Khan, Pir
Oh,
Inayat
I
Khan.
have read his books. I'm sorry, I have
Yeah,
read his books.
yeah,
Yes, it's very familiar. Yes. Okay, I missed that. But I did not know he had current disciples that are currently
yeah.
spreading his message. Okay. I think that famous book was The Mysticism of Sound and Music. Yes,
He's the guy.
that's right. I
He's the
wonder if I could share my screen or if, okay. But I think it would be wonderful for my Jewish community to and all people to learn about his work because I've read the book and it's incredible. And it speaks so much to what I've done and to what you're doing. And I think this is the joy of me sharing the name of Abulafia
yeah.
and sharing all the great Sufi leaders. Hazrat Inyat Khan, exactly. I always forgot. Does Hazrat mean? Is Hazrat a title or is that his name?
No, it's a title. It's just
Yes.
out of respect. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great.
Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. So, what are your future plans out of this whole networking which you are doing in multiple countries? How you see? it advancing, like now the use of technology is there. You are having your online classes as well. So how you
Yes.
see it growing in future, mixing it with, I'm questioning Elon Musk inside Jason.
Yes, yes. Yeah. The big picture.
Yeah.
Um, to me, the ultimate goal, and then I'll work backwards. The ultimate goal is that I could get on a plane to Pakistan or Sweden, and there would be a universal language room in the airport or in the local mosque or the local synagogue. And then I'd walk over there, and before I got used to the new people in the new language, before I said hello, I'd go to a universal language room and sort of come into the moment in the new place to really understand the people I'm visiting. And there would be some place where I could sit and play music and everyone nod and smile. And there would be some meditation center. And I think that's wonderful for world travel. And I also would think the other component is daily life. I would love to wake up every day in a very competitive capitalist society, which I do believe in, but it's it's just too competitive, and it just does not have that collaborative part. And I really want that people in competition, because that's just normal human life, would have a very strong inclination to collaboration, and you can only do it through practice. So I'd love to get up in the morning. I go to my synagogue around, I don't know, 6 in the morning, and we do our prayers. But before or after, I would love to have a universal language room with people from all walks of life in Memphis or wherever I'm living, and collaborate, play the music, and then say, well, have a great day. You know, we're going to compete during the day, we're going to be helpful during the day. It depends on the situation. We might be doing it at the same time, but let's really inject collaboration into society even while we're competing. And we need that. And we need that around the world. We need people to be dedicated to collaboration and also being the best they can in their field. It's just, I'm not here to change human nature. A lot of systems have tried to do that with terrible results. So I'm very much inclined to understand human nature is one of competition. But if it's not balanced with or softened with collaboration, it just runs amok. So the big picture is a world where people look, I mean, to me, a lot of people talk about unity, but they don't start a podcast like you. Like you are putting something on the ground and saying, well, I know we're talking about unity and it's a great slogan, but how do we do it? That's why I love that we've met because you're like, I want something concrete. And that's what I want. I want people to practice unity. We can talk about it all day long and we can have ideals, but we're missing the mark in today's society. Where people are talking about inclusivity and tolerance and unity, but I don't see it happening. I see other trends happening. So I would love a concrete practice, like when people, I forgot what it's called. Anyways, there's some like I think it's called cross track, where people get up in the morning and they do like really intense physical workouts. I want intense unity workouts. I want people to push themselves for unity and get up early in the morning and practice unity. I don't want to hear talk about it anymore. I think talk is very cheap or very inexpensive. The other project is to translate Abulafia into all the language I can get it into. And this is his universal manual. So
Oh.
this is the Urdu that I sent,
Mm-hmm.
and like Hazrat, here's a rabbi that had a message for every human. He loved every human, and he wanted every human to find their path to God. And so he's unique, and so I hope that he's helpful. And to conclude my comments, that I don't want it to necessarily be a religious project. I don't want it to necessarily be a secular project. I just want the tools to be available for people to find their path to God. If they're not God inclined, let it be a path towards more unity and understanding. But again, like Home Depot, I keep going back to Home Depot. Home Depot is neither secular nor religious. It's a tool center. And I would like the Bridge Institute to be a tool center for people of any persuasion or walk of life to take a tool and say, I could use this. Thank you so much.
The topic is so interesting that we can talk about it like the whole night and days and
I
days.
agree. Something that I would like your listeners to know is that we would love to interview you to understand more about Universal Sufi, Sufi Arts Cultural Heritage Center. I very much appreciated the ability to speak today, and provide, and your listening to my story and ideas. Something that I would love for our institute to do, which we've discussed, is to host you and to hear your unique story. So let's please put that on the agenda to host you, what we call the Beit Abulafia podcast, and feature your vision and all the work that you've been doing, which I've been studying for the past couple of weeks since receiving the websites.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. God bless you.